Okay, we're going to switch to the big international story of the day and the fact that Hamas could soon release hostages to Israel after the Netanyahu government agreed to a potential 4-day pause in its assault on Gaza.
I just want to hug my children, to kiss them.
It's a very important start for us, and we're very hopeful to see them home soon.
We need all the people back, children, mothers, elders, soldiers, everybody.
Families of hostages taken by Hamas 6 weeks ago are anxiously waiting to see if their loved ones are released. The temporary ceasefire has yet to begin, and Israel now says it's not likely before Friday. Meanwhile, bombs continue to rain on Gaza. This was the scene in southern Gaza today, moments after an Israeli airstrike. Witnesses say a residential area containing 20 homes was bombed. Israel's military is shifting its focus further south after flattening much of the north. And for more on the status of the talks on this hostage deal, I'm joined by Iddo Moed, who is Israel's ambassador to Canada. Ambassador, thank you for joining us. I want to start. We expected this hostage exchange in return for a temporary pause in military action to start tomorrow. We now get word from Prime Minister Netanyahu that this might not happen until Friday. Why the delay? What's going on?
There's no delay. Actually, the original plan was to have the swap on Friday, but we have to remember we're dealing with a terrorist entity here, and there is no way to know exactly what they are meaning when they say something. So we have to make sure that to verify every little detail of this transaction, and we have to make sure that once we do this, Hamas will stick by their word. We don't believe it, by the way, but we have to make sure that from our side this will happen. And beyond that, we also have to remember that this is a very complicated situation for Israel. It's actually heartbreaking for our society. We are very happy that 50 of the hostages are coming back, but some of them are orphans they don't know that they lost their parents. Some of them are old and sick. It's a horrible situation. And there are more than 200 people that remain in the hands of the Hamas. 200 people that maybe now, if this deal goes through, will get for the first time some kind of humanitarian relief in the form of medication. So we are extremely concerned, and we are shocked, and we are heartbroken over this situation.
Right, as we understand it right now, the hostages will come out through the Rafah gate into Egypt and go into Israel for medical checks. The Red Cross will reportedly be given access to the hostages who remain in custody. But in terms of the Thursday-Friday issue, we've seen bulletins coming across the wire that President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they've agreed that the work on all of this wasn't completely done. Do you know if that means they're trying to get this from, it was supposed to be phased, like 10 hostages a day released in return for so many Palestinians, or are they trying to get everybody out all at once? Do you know
my guess is that we are dealing with a terrorist organization that is completely unreliable in every word, in every way, shape, or form. So we have to verify and double-check everything and anything. They'll do anything to continue this psychological warfare, which is a continuation of the October 7 massacre. And they'll do anything that they can do to trick Israel's minds, to try and break our society, to break our resilience and our spirit. But we are determined to finish off with Hamas. When this operation is over, there will be no Hamas left over. There will be no Hamas regime, and the Gaza Strip will be freed from Hamas.
But is this a delay of a day or not? Or were the reports suggesting it was going to start tomorrow inaccurate? What is your understanding?
That was actually the original date.
Right.
But again, the question is really how can we rely on words of this monstrous genocidal organization that's extremely, extremely hard, and we're dealing with people's lives. So it's a very, very unstable situation. We hope to get our hostages, all our hostages, as quickly as possible back.
Many Arab nations are welcoming what would be a temporary pause if this deal goes through, and you know, for every 10 hostages released, there's a day of no bombing, no military action by Israel, and they're hoping this could be the foundation for a full ceasefire. If everybody is released, not just the 50, if Israel gets all of its hostages out, could that be the basis of a ceasefire and the end of military operations in Gaza?
We set out several objectives in this operation. One is to liberate all our hostages. The second is to eliminate completely the Hamas regime of the Gaza Strip. And the third is to eliminate the terrorist threat that emanates from the Gaza Strip into Israel. This is when we achieve these three objectives, that's when we'll cease.
Okay, but Iran said today, they warned today, their foreign minister, that if this truce, as they call it, I know you call it a pause, and truce means something completely different, if it does not continue, they argue the war will spread. What's your reaction to the words from the Iranian foreign minister?
Any words that emanate from the Iranian foreign minister, from a regime that abuses its own population, a regime that is behind, that orchestrates actually the actions of 30 militias in our region, including Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah, anything that emanates to terminology that relates to international law is rubbish. So whatever they'll say has no meaning whatsoever. Iran stated very, very clearly that they are about to eliminate the state of Israel, that Israel has no right to exist. And so in our eyes, this is completely meaningless. What is the only thing that means that is relevant right now is to eradicate the threat of Hamas and make sure that they don't pose a threat to the southern part of Israel anymore.
If this hostage exchange goes through on Friday, as I'm sure you hope and the families hope, and the truce happens, the pause in the military activities happens, aid groups are going to get into Gaza, maybe some journalists will get into Gaza. To this point, Israel has disputed the casualty account and some of the accounts of the devastation inside because of Hamas's control on the area, saying that information comes from Hamas, it can't be relied upon. If international aid groups and journalists start corroborating some of the things that have been in there, do you think public opinion globally will tolerate the resumption of the bombing campaign after an end in hostilities for several days?
So I'll say a few things. First and foremost, Hamas is a terrorist organization, a genocidal terrorist organization. We've seen the evidence of that. 1,400 or 1,200 people that were slaughtered, butchered, raped, killed, and others kidnapped. So we know what we are dealing with. We don't need to show more evidence than those people who testify by their own lives what happened. Beyond that, Israel is a democracy, and as a democracy, it upholds international law, and we abide by international law, which means that in times of war, we have to do our utmost to spare people's lives on all sides. And this is exactly what we are trying to do. So when you're speaking of humanitarian aid, we facilitate as much as possible the entrance of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and hundreds of trucks and thousands of tons of humanitarian aid was delivered to the Gaza. But at the same time, we're waging a war against an entity that hides behind the population, that hides underneath the Shifa hospital, that hides within kindergartens. And we've shown those images of bulletproof vests that were taken, by the way, from the kibbutzim near the border. So we know that those specific terrorists came with those equipment into the Gaza Strip and into Al Shifa with wounded hostages. We've seen the arms, we've seen the munitions that they hide in kindergarten, in the RNTC hospital. So there's ample proof. There's nothing that Israel needs to prove beyond that. But we are not about proving anything to anybody. As a democracy, the government is responsible to the people, and they will do its utmost to protect the Israeli people.
Iddo Moed, Israel's ambassador to Canada, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.